Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of our enterprise. I am the Mike of the Mike and Niki Honey Company. We are beekeepers and honey producers and distributors. So we're working the what's come to be known as the farm to table aspect of, in this case, beekeeping. It's been an exciting ride so far. The past 6 years that we've been doing this, we now have somewhere between 45 and 50 hives. Kind of depends on what time of day we're counting. We keep our bees locally, pretty much on legacy farms, and so we're always looking for additional places that have a little bit of acreage, probably an acre plus, because with all of the news and notoriety around bees and colony death and varroa mites and everything else, we do have a fair amount of colony loss every year. So being able to jump around and go, check a hive in somebody's backyard here, and then go down around the corner and check 2 hives here, and the old traveling Milkman delivery type service, it just doesn't work with the amount of work that we have to do in hives. So by being at the farms, we can pull in with the truck and work half a dozen to 2 dozen hives in one shot. Probably the good news, the best news that we have is the heightened awareness around the plight of bees and everything else. I know a friend of mine, called me the other night, was watching something on Discovery Channel or something, and the experts were saying that if bees die, the human race has 4 years. The amount of our food product that is tied into bees and whatnot for pollination and growth is upwards of 70%. So you turn around and knock that out, and it's a little bit of a problem. So we're seeing government-wise, we're seeing some of the local governments rewrite their ordinances. Up until a couple of years ago, in the city of Santa Clara, you could not have any hives that were within 300 feet of a building or 1,000 feet of a roadway. And those of us who are around here in the city of Santa Clara, that would kind of leave us the golf course as the only legal place that you could put bees, and that's going to be redeveloped too. So they've rewritten that. City of San Jose has primarily completely erased their bee ordinance because animal control doesn't know what to do with winged creatures like bees. It's illegal for pest control companies to kill bees. So nobody knows what to do. So now their public policy is, if there's an issue, somebody calls in, there's a swarm in their backyard or a tree or something, they actually contact the Santa Clara County Bee Guild, which is our local organization of beekeepers, and we have 150 members here. So this is ongoing, as because so many of the ordinances were written decades ago, when for the valley here it was still mostly agrarian. We actually have hives on the Heritage Apricot Orchard in Sunnyvale, as well as I think the last remaining cherry orchard in Sunnyvale, as well as the last farm in Campbell. So these are some of the fun things we do, is helping preserve some of the background that we have here with the ag connections in the valley. And then bees, again, the work that we do is for the purpose of harvesting honey, which is taking the bees' food. So we work hives in such a manner that there's plenty of room for the bees to put aside excess. And so we have to be real careful on that, obviously not strip the hives down so much that they can't make it through the winter. Although here, California winters, I joke, we have summer and not summer is our 2 seasons here. But there are dearths to where the bees slow down production. Usually, actually usually in the holiday season, and surprisingly kind of mid-July going into August. There's just not much flowering at that time. And then there's still a lot of trees and plants and everything else that will then turn around and be putting on a bloom at the end of the year. So a lot of what we do is working to educate people, to make, even at the the fairs and whatnot that we do. Oh, I'm afraid of bees. I'm afraid of bees. So so now what we do at the shows that we have a table at, we actually bring an observation hive, so people can be looking through plexiglass at bees walking around on some honeycomb, and it's amazing when they're right on the other side of the plexiglass, but they start calming down because they realize the bees are not banging up against the glass trying to attack them. That's always the fear, is that they're going to attack. They don't. They're just out working. Most of the bee stings, I hear people when they actually get the past of I'm freaked out about bees, it's usually a yellow jacket or a wasp or something to where they stepped into a nest in a field somewhere, because most of the bees in the environment are actually ground nesting. So we harvest the honey, we spin it, trying to keep varietals going. One of our best sellers is actually just Wildflower Honey. So it's local honey that has all of the pollen that we have in the area. I don't know how many people have springtime allergies, and one of the most common ways to try to minimize that is local honey. Our honey, we market as raw and unfiltered. All we do is screen it so that we keep the pollen content high in our honey. If you can see through a jar of honey absolutely clear and everything, there probably isn't any pollen in it. They probably have filtered it. A lot of the honey on the shelves may also have been pasteurized, because you know when it's cold, honey doesn't move very well. So in order to work quantities of honey, you heat it up, it thins it out. And as soon as the honey gets probably 160 degrees or higher, it actually starts killing the enzymes. And we know that we need the enzymes, again, for our health. So our honey is not overheated nor overfiltered. And so, so the local also, that's, different people have different opinion of what local is. The most common thing I hear is within 50 miles, which is a pretty good radius. And then I also hear people talking up to 200 miles. And if you think about it, when we're having allergy issues and everything else, we're breathing air and it's moving. If it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we're breathing air that's blown through San Mateo County, because you get that 15-mile-an-hour breeze at the end of the day that's just coming right straight down the valley. So it isn't, so if you're living in Sunnyvale, it's not necessarily that you have to have Sunnyvale produce wildflower. It's going to be the area here, because what's the basis of the allergies? So we source our honey throughout Northern California primarily. Doug?
Question. You were saying that the pollen is still in the honey?
Yes.
And is that supposed to actually allow people to become less allergic to the pollens?
It's been found it doesn't work for everybody, so I always tell people to try it, and it's usually for people trying to see if honey is going to help their immune system build up. It's like the vaccine shots that we got as kids, and some people folks still get the flu shots. The pollen is a very low dose of what lights up your allergies. So with the honey, that's what we're looking to do, is help your body build up that immunity. And it's generally figured it's like a teaspoonful of honey in the morning and then a teaspoon of honey in the evening. and you do that, and it's generally not recommended just to do it during allergy season, but everybody does medicates a little bit differently. I think about it like the way I do my coffee. I will have coffee every morning. It's part of what I need. So with the honey, it's also taken it through year round, and we do a lot of artisan small batch productions. So like this weekend we'll have our springtime honey. So that's going to have the pollen, the springtime pollen, and then we'll be harvesting 4th of July and again Labor Day. So as each successive harvesting comes along, we're getting the different pollen in.
Question.
Yes, Judy.
So the backyard bees,
Yes.
do they belong to a hive somewhere?
The bees that are visiting the flowers that we always thank people that are planting flowers and everything else. Yes. Now the honeybee is a hive bee. They're not solitary bees like our big bumblebees and carpenter bees. Those are solitary bees. There's also we have here in the valley. There's hundreds of different types of bees. And even in our honeybees, we're sourcing Italian, Carniolan, Russian, and so we have 4 different varieties of bees. And then it's kind of when it comes to the queen mating, it's Woodstock. The queen, any new queen that goes out and mates with drones mates once in her life. And so she can mate with upwards of 24 drones.
Wow.
And which is why the hives will swarm. The queen will die off. Things will happen. We requeen. We expand and contract the hives as depending on how they're growing. So we have that mixture in the genetics of the bees.
So you manage the hives. Like,
Yes.
do you split them up and make more hives?
So with the hive management, what we're looking at doing is primarily 2 things. Disease control is really the primary reason that we actively manage our hives. With the varroa mite that came in from Japan, I think roughly 30 years ago, it's not the mite biting the bees that's causing the disease. The mite is a vector. It's not the mosquito bite that infects you. It's what the mosquito is carrying. So the varroa mite that we deal with. So we're actively trying to manage that. Varroa mites are in all hives. We just have to keep them knocked back from exploding, and which will kill a hive.
How do you do that?
There's a couple ways of doing it. We use we use as light of chemicals as we can. Thymol fog, thyme oil.
Doesn't hurt the bees?
And mineral oil does not hurt the bees. Actually, does not. I don't fog with honey supers on. So a lot of the work that we do is working the brood boxes, which are separate from the honey collection. Formic acid, which is another natural thing, which actually doesn't mess up honey, we can use mid-season, and then oxalic acid. And then there's other created chemicals which we try to avoid using. But it's, so we're measuring, actually measuring mite count to see how many mites are in the hive to determine the level of what we're going to do. Mites prefer drones, so we purposely work the hives and cause excessive drone comb. Drones are bigger, so they're in larger cells. So we create to where the bees are raising a lot more drones. Drones are also healthy for the hive, healthy for the queen. But then we can go in, and the mites prefer that because the mites go into the cells before the bees grow and come out, and the drones are in the cells for 3 days longer. And that's where the mites grow and populate. So then we'll go in and open up some of the cells looking for mites, and if we have a heavy mite count, we literally just destroy that comb, which knocks them back. Midwest, up north, when it gets cold, the queen stops laying. That also breaks the cycle. Here, the queen's laying year round, so we have to do more management on the varroa mite. So we're in doing that, and the other reason we're managing the hives is for the honey production. So we have 2-week hives. We'll turn around and combine them together. A normal hive this time of year, the hives are running probably would be running 60 to 120,000 bees.
One hive?
One hive. And a bee's average lifespan, summertime bees, worker bees, is 6 weeks. So the queen's laying 2,000 eggs a day. So it's working this cycle through, and some of the hives that are strong, we'll split them, and it's as much art as it is science. We try one thing and it works. We repeat it until it doesn't work, and we think we know what we're doing, and then the bees will teach us that now we're still learning.
So the bee production is for a period of about 6 months or 5 months?
Pretty much, so, yeah. What the bees will consume their own production. The excess production that we're doing, we just harvested this last weekend. Depending on how the spring goes. Last year it was hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, and had friends of ours that actually had electronics and scales underneath the hive, and you could see, when it was hot, the weight of the hive was going up. When it got cold, the weight of the hive was going down. The bees were not going out, and they still eat every day. So that was fun to watch.
They eat their own honey?
Oh yeah. That is their food source, and that's why they put it up in comb, is to store the honey for times when there is no food supply. Bees have been around about as long as anything else, millions of years.
How do you go about protecting your beehive production? Because there has been a lot of problems in the Central Valley with beehives being stolen.
Yes. We don't highly publicize where our hives are at, and now we're more in urban areas, so people having the gear to pull up and load up the hives and take them, it's a little bit more difficult, or somebody would probably see them. There's a lot of technology going on, a lot of startups working with tracking and RFID chips to track the hives. Active, the police are on it. This, we're talking a multi-billion-dollar industry, and almonds currently, now they're working on genetics for an almond that doesn't need to be, doesn't have to have the bees to pollinate, but all of the almonds we have requires bees to pollinate, otherwise there's no almonds. The Central Valley produces 80% of the world's almonds. We have 1.5 million acres in almond production, and it takes 2 hives per acre.
Wow.
Not as much as you think, because most of them are going to the drip irrigation and everything else. They're not flooding fields the way you do with cotton or rice. So is there water usage? Yes. The challenge, the Central Valley water challenge, to me, it goes back, our water regs were written in the late 1800s. Nothing's been rewritten since. And so, so the water management, we haven't done it, the state hasn't been active in negotiating and updating that any more than they have with the roads and infrastructures. So that's an ongoing problem we have. We water our bees, we provide water sources for them, because that's, they need water. And so during the summer, we have, at our house, we have 2 fountains going. So we like advocating people to put fountains in. Always happy to help with, the tips and tricks that we've learned on how to keep them running right so they're not stagnating. And again, we manage the hives, so we're part of, beekeepers are actually part of the problem with the bees, because we're aggressively managing them, which probably shortens the life of the queen, because it's just not, it's not as natural.
Would it help to have people who have backyards in the Bay Area to have their own little beehive production to kind of keep the beehive?
It is, the trick is just work in the hives.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge. We have members of the Bee Guild who do that as part of their business, and put a hive in your backyard, and they charge you X dollars a month to manage and work the hive, and they will be working the hive, doing whatever medication needs to be done, and then the arrangements, whatever the honey production is. I know one of our friends did that in here in Campbell in the first year, pulled off over 100 pounds of honey, which goes a long way. But so having more bees, yes, we have pretty big challenges with the not in my backyard contingent, because so many people are just very nervous around bees.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to help the bees, but I don't want them in my backyard.
Do honeybees sting?
Yes, honeybees do sting.
Only if provoked?
Generally only when provoked. I'm aggressively working hives, so I get stung probably every weekend.
You wear all the gear, right?
I put the gear on, anymore, because it's so warm around here. I'm in blue jeans, and they'll sting. They'll make it through blue jeans. So I get tagged, but I've once again built up the immunity to it, so it stings, it burns like heck for 15 minutes, and I forget I got stung.
Yeah.
Nikki will still be itching everything else 3 weeks later. She has the DNA to, if a bee's going to get angry and decide to try to sting somebody, they'll go after her.
They can only sting once, right?
They can only
kills them, right? They sting
except for the queen.
Except for the queen.
Yeah, the queen has no barb on the stinger, so the queen can sting. But we're not. The queen rarely. That's usually internal fight, because the hives will still produce queens. That's where we get swarms early in the season. Swarm is they've raised another queen, and half of the hive or whatever else takes off to go find another locale.
Have you worked with some of the wineries in the area?
Not as yet. So I look at wanting to talk with. Well, actually, we have a winery out in Soquel that we're starting to talk with. But the wineries, the challenge is what else is in the area, because part of the challenge we also have is monoculture. Once 85% of all the bees in the U.S. have been here to pollinate the almonds, what do you do with 3 million hives and nothing else growing? So a lot of the solar farms are starting to grow things in between it, to also help retain water in your. So there's a lot of tech and a lot of management going on in that arena. The other one I'm looking forward to talking with, the inside grow houses. The marijuana, not so much, because they're actually hand pollinated. So they're, they want to control it. It's so highly controlled, and it's not legal. So we're not helping. We don't know where the outdoor grow locations are, other than Lake County and Sandwich Mountains. Doug?
Is it the mites that are causing all the hives to die? Have you determined what's
We haven't, yeah, it's termed colony collapse disorder. And of all of the commercial beekeepers, we're all running probably close to 30% hive loss every year. And so there's a lot of energy going forth on that, trying different things. The varroa mite is our primary target to try to control, but we're also wondering how much of it is because of the excessive management that we're doing on the hives. Because some of our hives that we lost, all of a sudden there's no bees in the hive, and we go in and there's absolutely nothing wrong in the hive. There's food in there, there's resources, so it isn't like the hive ran into a dearth and it had to exit stage right to go find some place to hang out. We just don't know the why behind it.
They don't like you bugging them.
There's people that want to do no management, but the problem is the varroa mite doesn't care, and they will grow to the point they will create a mite bomb. And when the hive is dying, all those bees are leaving and going finding someplace else to live.
Huh.
So it's like having it's what did I recently read? Polio is making a resurrection, and it's primarily in areas people are not vaccinated.
Measles.
Or measles. Yeah. Measles is the one.
Yeah.
We've basically eradicated it. But when you have people that are not doing the precautions, it can start coming back. So that's really the problem, the worry we have with the individual backyard beekeeper. We encourage people to do it, but we encourage them to do it intelligently. We have people going, nope, the bees know what to do, I'm not going to touch them and everything else, and somewhere in 2 to 5 years the hive will die. And then it's just, oh well, it was my turn to have a hive die, and we wonder how many other hives got infected around the area. So it's ongoing conversation, a lot of education.
So when you have a hive collapse, there are not a whole bunch of dead bees in the hive.
It
They
is
just leave.
absolutely clean. When a hive gets poisoned, yes, we will have people that will turn around and poison neighbors' hives. They don't like bees. They are bugs and should be killed. So when a hive gets poisoned, you'll have a whole lot of dead bees right outside of the hive. It's like in the cherry orchard, as they have to do their spraying, we know when they're going to spray, so we go the night, because they spray like 6 a.m. in the morning. Really great people to work with. We'll go in the night before, after sunset, and screen off all the entrances of the hives. Noise the bees because they can't go outside and go potty. But we lock them up. Spray rigs go through the orchard, and then we go back out roughly about noon and open them back up again. So that's where we have to working with the orchard growers.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up. Got a minute or two, and then we got to be done.
Question. How about the Africanized bees? Do they have any effect on your business?
On ours, no. The Africanized bees, we do have that DNA up here. It's estimated somewhere between 5 and 15% of the DNA has the Africanized gene in it.
So they intermix.
Yes, well, because queen and drone. Yeah, so you always have that mix. Up here, we don't have to worry so much about it because the Africanized bee, again, Africa, it's along the equator. Phoenix has, Phoenix, Southern California, the Inland Empire, down into Mexico, much bigger problem with Africanized bees, and those bees, and what the Africanized bee is somebody who's eternally pissed off and they're guarding their home. So you get too close, they're coming after you. That's just what it is. It's like, I think it was last summer or the summer before, the dog out in Concord area that was stung so much and died. What a lot of people don't realize is it's probably the pheromones from whatever shampoo was being used on the dog.
But they still pollinate. They still
Oh,
pollinate, yeah.
they pollinate and they put up honey, you know, that's one of those, you know, the Russian, Russian bees are probably some of the most aggressive we have in Europe and the US. I look for those bees, you know, Niki not so much. The Russian bees, those girls are always mad, but they put up honey like nobody else.
What are Africanized?
Africanized bees, you know, it's a, you know, it was a strain of bee that is extremely aggressive. You know, it's, you know, the cartoons that we used to see where, you know, the bees come out of the thing and chase you and you go run into the lake. Africanized bees will do that.
Why are they called Africanized?
Because they actually originate out of Africa.
How'd they get here?
They accidentally got, it was a gentleman in Brazil brought some Africanized bees back from a trip, you know, this is in the 30s or 40s, 1930s, 1940s, brought some of the Africanized bees back from a trip to Africa and was studying them, you know, in a lab that he had, and somebody accidentally let them loose, or let a queen get out or something, and you know, it's like
Okay,
everything
we
else in
need to
nature,
wrap- we need
it
to wrap this up.
propagates. So that's what we do. We're at shows. I always bring honey with me, and we do tastings and everything else. So it's just
Really good honey.
a very sweet business to enjoy the pun. We have so many good puns that we can do with bees. It's great.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Yep.
Thank you. Very good.